dip. Should you get involved? I am. Should you? ETFs, are they back? Flows came in. How do they look versus history? Technical analysis for Bitcoin. What's CoinDesk looking at? Well, they're looking at the 50-week moving average. What should you not be looking at? The 50-week moving average. If everyone's looking at the same thing, it's wrong. Now, speaking of that, let's talk about, or we will talk about, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent. Is he a hero? Is he a fool? Or both? And if he's both, or if he's one or the other, how does it help crypto? This is the market update. Stay tuned for this live technical analysis. If you need a roadmap in crypto, subscribe to this channel. Turn on alerts so you know when we're going live. And if the content works for you, make sure you hit the like button. Patreon Platinum has new research. The monetization trade. 8 coins that might actually be attached to protocols that make money in this new AI high velocity world. 6th Street Crypto is also back. Please check it out. And don't forget the YouTube member area where Toby Ward predicted that August would be a good month for crypto. I think August has been a good month for crypto. What do you think? Okay, let's rip right into Scott Bessent. Last night, Bitcoin pops through 80K and then comes off. As always, it's not a bull market until you can buy a dip and make money. As Bitcoin dips, the debate over whether Scott Bessent was right or wrong is now raging. So on one hand, you know, Bessent says he's going to do whatever it takes. He's going to put the fear of God into anybody who wants to short U.S. long bonds and press yields higher. Wall Street executives have essentially been told this. This would include buybacks, moving all of U.S. debt issuance to the short term, eliminating long-term U.S. bond issuance, creating a shortage. And of course, there's this idea that AI and productivity can somehow help us grow our way out of the $40 trillion debt. Now, scaring Wall Street, they can do. Printing money, they can do. Can they grow their way out of 40 trillion in debt? In other words, can they grow the economy to where tax receipts help bail them out of this problem? Yeah, I don't think so. I don't think so. They're going to need some kind of fiscal constraint at some point. Now, if Bessent really thinks or is really delusional, because yesterday, Stan Druckenmiller came out and said he is delusional. You cannot control long-term interest rates. It's called yield curve control. That has failed miserably throughout history. It's failed miserably in Japan because they did it for a while and then eventually they had to just let the market loose. So, how do you, as a crypto investor, reconcile these two things? Well, you're going to listen just for a minute to Stan Druckenmiller, famous hedge fund guy, never had a down year, literally. And of course, he's an old school economics guy. And here's what he had to say. And here's what's really bullish Bitcoin. I have spent 5 decades trading on a simple premise. Markets aggregate information no committee possesses, and prices are how that information reaches decision makers. Price is a function of a set of information, is how I learned it. The long-term treasury yield is the most important price in the world. which is what made it an honor to be in the bond pit back in the 90s. It's also the only fiscal disciplinarian the U.S. has left. Every basis point of artificial yield suppression is a subsidy to procrastination. Return buybacks to their stated purpose, small, scheduled, off-the-run liquidity operations announced quarterly, never off-cycle responses to yield levels. In other words, just do your maintenance, just do your treasury stuff, and don't turn this into a new form of QE. Term out the debt honestly and pay the price the market sets. If the 30-year must trade at 5.5% for people to buy the bonds, that isn't a crisis. It's an invoice. Then do the only thing that durably lowers long-term yields, address the deficit. Now, that says multiple things. One, it tells Uncle Sugar to stop spending money, which won't happen. Even if Uncle Sugar did stop spending money, that would allow immediate Fed rate cuts. Immediate Fed rate cuts, because that's been the problem. That was the 2026 problem. Higher deficits, higher rates, no liquidity response, no Bitcoin rally. Everybody bought oil, gold, and it was a fear trade instead of a liquidity trade. So if Uncle Sugar spent less money, interest rates would fall and Bitcoin would rip. Now, the one I like better, which of course, has a little bit of splash of disaster corn on the cob, is they have admitted that there is a problem. They've had to go public with the problem. They have had to go on the tape for multiple days to try to establish Bessent as a former hedge fund tough guy. And it's a great persona. I mean, he's a little eccentric, but he's obviously a huge guy with a temper, and he is believable, even if his actions are not believable. Now, you're probably trying to okay, Bill, I've had my coffee. You're giving me a headache. Actually, I'm not. Because whether he's a genius or a fool, it's buy Bitcoin. This is the Bitcoin standard. This is what everyone's been waiting for, except in this particular case, they said the quiet part out loud. They said it out loud. Not only did they say it out loud, but think about this. They're calling Wall Street executives. Ring. Hi, it's Scott Bessent at the Treasury. Don't you dare try to short U.S. long bonds or it'll turn out really bad for you. Click. That's not how the conversation went. That's not. Most likely there was conversations about how banks can continue to buy treasuries. And of course, there would be discussions as to why, right? They don't just issue orders. You don't get a text that says, don't do it. No. The banks know why they have to do it. The banks know that Bessent is doing it because they might be in trouble. There might be some sort of, serious problem beyond the just $40 trillion headline. Or because the government plans to be even more irresponsible. Or disrupt the financial system, or do whatever it is sovereigns do, which is simply and plainly screw up the economy, screw up the monetary policy, screw up the fiscal policy. So if Bessent's a hero, Bitcoin's going up, they're printing money. If Bessent is a goat or a moron, I think Bitcoin is going up even more. Because again, this is what Bitcoin was designed to do. Now, speaking of what Bitcoin was designed to do, let's talk about what happened last week. Bitcoin rips, short sellers and hedgers, right? Everybody was like, yeah, I love Bitcoin, but I want to bet that Bitcoin's not going to go up too much. I love Bitcoin, but I want it to go up at my pace. so I can make a little extra money using the derivatives market. So I love Bitcoin going up, but I love it going up slowly. And as you may have heard, sometimes markets can do what hurts the most people. So the bulls are waiting for October. The shorts are short. The bears are bearish. And the bulls don't want it to go up sharply. Okay, so what's it do? Well, it goes straight up. It goes from 65 to 80. They had a euphoric kind of mini blow off top last night. But really, if you think about it, other than blowing out the shorts and having open interest essentially vaporized, like everyone in the market was short, and it's like the market's doing a reset. Now, on a move like that, you would like to see open interest expand. You would like to see bulls coming in. But that move was so fast, nobody had time to get long. Nobody did. Everybody just had to get out. Now, where you measure transitioning, where you measure whether or not people got long, you simply look at ETF flows. So if you look at ETF flows, there were, 3 billion of flows in November of 2024. You had more euphoria in 2025 where it was over 2 billion. Okay. This was the March to 120K. At the top in October of 2025, you had about 2.5 billion come in to the Bitcoin ETF, to IBIT. And last week, you had about 1.8 billion. So it did make the top 5. Everybody who got out of NASDAQ, a lot of people did come back into the Bitcoin ETF. But, there's still a lot of room for flows. Or if you're bearish, you can say, well, it wasn't phantasmagoric. It wasn't like mind-boggling. And here's my view. I like hesitation. I like short sellers. I like it when people say, well, what Bessent did really isn't good for Bitcoin. When I just explained to you, regardless of your view, it's bullish Bitcoin. Either they're going to print or there's a problem that they can't print their way out of. I mean, what more bullish? How much more bullish can you get? So yes, they came back into the Bitcoin ETF. Was like kind of like the 5th biggest week ever. Man. Now, the other news items, which I like, was Tom Lee bought more ETH. I love the chart of ETH. I love the 1 hour chart because nothing is really happening except this little mini dip signal. And I'm going to use this alpha intelligence thing to do one simple thing. I am going to try to find every little tactical buy signal that I can, stay away from the market when there's a tactical sell signal, and just let this thing come to me and just buy every dip. Just buy the dips. And if it works, great. It's a bull market. And if it doesn't work, fine. I got stopped out on a tactical trade. But if it works and you can just buy ETH at, I don't know, 2,400 or 2,380 or whatever, and you can just hang on, well, a guy like Tom Lee who thinks it's going to 9,000 is going to buy with both hands at 2,400. Now, this may be talking out of both sides of my mouth, but I don't care. One of the most underreported stories is that Michael Saylor, instead of FOMOing into more Bitcoin, actually raised cash to be able to pay the dividend. Now, I don't think he had to sell Bitcoin to do it, but they've raised additional cash. Now, I like this because I like Mike having a cushion where he doesn't have to like sell $200 million in Bitcoin, which is a joke, which cratered the market. It cratered the market psychology. So Tom Lee getting involved, expressing his view, I like. Mike raising cash, I also like, because we know Mike is going to be back. We know he is. And, if everyone looks at strategy not buying Bitcoin as a sign of weakness, good. Because you get the dip that you so desperately need, because everyone thinks it's already started. Everyone is already trying to say that this is like some kind of fake rally because now we're back at the 50-week moving averages. We're back to all these like 4-year cycle, what I call old Bitcoin TA, you know, the 50-week moving average, the 200-week moving average. You know what? If everyone's looking at the same thing, it's wrong. It's wrong. That's it. Everyone has been looking at these metrics. I'm like, fine. They worked. They were great on Twitter, but did they really tell you whether this was a bear market or a correction? They didn't tell you anything. It looked like a bear market, and it had everybody sitting around waiting for October. Now we're at a major stress point. Shorts have been blown out. We're going to wait for longs to come in. And if you blow out all these shorts, if you have the blowout that you've had, and the only dip you get in Bitcoin is 78 or 76, that means longs are coming in, or short sellers don't want to play anymore. They just got smoked. It's like, hey, you guys want to come back in? Okay, come back in. There's still more room to come into the BlackRock Bitcoin ETF. You would have thought if this was a bear market, you would have rushed up to 81 and things would be at 85 today. I'm sorry. They would be at 75 or 74 today. Right? Because that's what happens, right? All the buying comes in for the short sellers. And then when the short sellers are out, there's no bid down below. Has that happened yet? No. And you know what? If it doesn't happen, guess what? Buyers are going to be forced into the market. They're not going to want to buy it. I don't think anybody wants to pay 80K except me. I don't care. You could pay 80, you could pay 70, you could pay whatever. Who cares? Where is this thing going to be at the end of October? Where is this thing going to be when everybody goes, well, I guess the 4-year cycle was over early. Where's it going to be in December? What's going to happen in November, right? Are you going to have a shift left? Do they think that their money is their money and your money is their money? Even if that doesn't play in terms of like who wins the event, you're going to hear this rhetoric. You're going to hear guys talking about this. This whole eat the rich thing where they can come in and take your money. You're going to hear it. They say these type of things in New York City. There are Senate races in the Midwest. Guys are saying it. And we're all in the mood to say the quiet part out loud. We're done hiding it. We're done ignoring stuff. Like, we were ignoring the hyperscaler debt problem, whether that comes or whether that goes. NVIDIA earnings are coming out, whatever. We all know that those guys have a financial constraint and they have borrowed too much. I don't have the link, and the Eagle King is not here today, but Head Lizard from OpenAI came out and said, the AI apocalypse where AI takes over everything and everyone loses their job and, everyone bows down to me, that may be somewhat delayed. My timeline was off. Yeah, bro, your timeline is off because you can't borrow enough money. As Toby said, and multiple other guys have said, but Toby said it first, the constraint on AI is financial. And this is basically known at this point. That they don't have enough money and they can't issue enough debt to build what they have to build to go along with the energy and the water constraint. Not, robots, AI, okay, great. Terminator, Matrix, Star Trek, you pick whether it's positive or negative. They got a debt problem. So they got a debt problem and Uncle Sugar's got a debt problem. Because if they have to backtrack on their vision of the future, yeah, they've been told no. Which means their existing debt is garbage. That's what that means. Right? If they can't get any more money, that means the bonds that they've already issued are sludge. Wall Street can't get out of the positions. Mutual funds, whoever owns it, can't get out of the positions. They can't hedge. They can't protect themselves. What are they going to do? It's a massive debt problem. It's bigger than whatever's going on with Uncle Sugar. Why do you think Bessent's coming in? Think, the U.S. government just saw the $40 trillion number and decided to start addressing it? This is, of course, what's not on Twitter. Scott Bessent is calling Wall Street. Who called Scott Bessent? The hyperscalers. We can't get any more money. Can't get any more money. So we're going to do what? We're going to look at the 50 and 200 week moving average? Or are we going to look at reality? I like reality. So here's my homie, Jordy Visser. This guy I used to work with. Last week, Bitcoin had its largest weekly move in a decade while breaking above the 200-day moving average. On August 21st, the 200-day moving average slope turned positive for the first time in 279 days. God, I wish I had the historical data tool I had at Goldman. This is the type of stuff I used to do. And this guy just sits in a room all day and does AI, which is how you know. How you know these numbers are good. So let me say this again. On August 21st, the 200-day moving average slope turned positive for the first time in 279 days. Here are all the times in Bitcoin history when the 200-day slope was negative for more than 100 days. And then what are the forward returns when the 200-day moving average was falling and then it kinked this way? In all cases, the low made during that decline window was never broken. 19,000 was that number in 2022. 77K was the number this year. In all cases, the low made during that decline window was never broken. So he's talking about 77K as the special number. So if they take it down to 77K or 78K, this would be a golden buying opportunity, wouldn't it? It's that simple. So what he's doing is he's going to the 200-day moving average. He's looking at the slope of the 200-day moving average. He's looking at where Bitcoin was during that period. In other words, he's looking at something everyone else is not looking at. CoinDesk, 50-week moving average. Every time it gets to there were 2 times where it got to this level and then it turned around and made a new cycle low. Still fantasizing about 40K. Still fantasizing about the idea that I want it to go down so I can buy it. I'm bullish, but I want it to go down because that's convenient and tidy for me. And as the guy who I used to work for, who traded the 10-year note, used to say, everyone likes it tidy. And you know what? It never is. It never is. Now, if you weren't bullish, you didn't have any positions, or you dumped your whole bag, now you're in a more difficult position. Now, naturally, we're going to help you with this. We already have. We just published our butt off in Patreon, both in the VIP area and in the 6th Street crypto area, with 2 different tiers, discussing altcoins, discussing what's been happening in this market, which I think, like the market update in terms of like what they bought recently, is worth looking at from an altcoin perspective, because I'll give you a hint. What rallies first, the quality or the junk? In other words, everyone looks at it like a new bull market and goes, oh, well, this garbage is the stuff that rallied. This can't be a real bull market. No, it's exactly on track. And of course, the hint that I will give you is that ETH didn't move. If ETH is the best thing for the new AI era because of the proof of stake mechanisms and your incentive to hold it, not just fling it back and forth, not just have a machine fling it back and forth, the actual incentive to hold it because of the staking mechanism, not to mention the real world assets and the stable coins that are already on ETH. ETH didn't do anything. That's why I love Tom Lee. Tom Lee's like, oh my God, this whole thing took off and ETH is still, ETH is still where it was back in the FTX days. Like, okay. It's like, I've got 5% of the supply. Let's go buy 6%. Let's buy more. You got to be kidding me. These morons ripped it to the upside and then left it by the side of the road. Or not left it by the side of the road, but, like XRP does a 50% rally, good for everybody in XRP land. But is XRP better than ETH in a machine world? Is Solana better than ETH in a machine world? I think the answer is no. That's slightly controversial. Whatever. Guys who believe what they believe are acting on it, and there's plenty of reason to act on it, because it's almost like when this market went up, they bought all the stuff from the 2022 bottom. They bought memes, they bought Solana stuff. Great. I'm happy to see the speculation engine back. That's the good news. And that's what we published on. We just took that and said, okay, here's what rallied. Here's what it means. Here's the quality stuff that's eventually going to go. And go, and go, and go, and go. Because if Jordy Visser is right, that once this thing stops going down, measured in a way few people can see, your dips should be shallow. I mean, can you imagine if you never saw Bitcoin below 77 again? Who's saying that? That's even too wackadoo for me. That's crazy, right? I mean, 77K is it? I mean, if you bring up alpha intelligence for ETH, which is what I'm watching like a hawk, right? Like, here's Tom Lee, I think, right? These volume numbers, like, there's nothing coming in over the top of Ethereum in terms of volume. Like, there's my little blue arrow. You want to know what I'm looking for? I'm looking for blue arrows in all my coins. Just let it sit there. Let it trade. Be disciplined. Don't get too wound up about these sell signals for now, because you're going to see them. Well, there's one in Solana. That's fine. But where are the dips? And if you buy the dips, do you make money? Well, look, if you bought the dip in ETH, look at that. You made a little money. You didn't make a lot of money, but you made a little money. I'm okay with that. That's what I'm looking for. Now, again, if you look at Solana on the same time frame, okay, you see some sell signals on the 1 hour chart, and you see that working. Okay. So what did Alpha Intelligence tell you here? Well, it told you, the link is down below, and we're moving into like the soft part of it, the soft sell. I don't have to hard sell this anymore, because now I know how I'm using it. Now I know what I'm doing with it. It's like, okay, Solana gets a little frothy. Altcoins get a little frothy. Okay. Oh, well, chill out. We'll just, get the cowboy hat out of the closet, like on the thumbnail, and sit here and say, I'm going to buy every dip. Come get me. Just come get me. Okay. If I'm wrong, you know what? The beautiful thing about never getting bearish, about thinking this was a correction and not a bear market, is that I'm not really afraid to be wrong. I'm not. It's like, I'm buying dips. Come get me. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. You buy dips in this thing and it works, and guys like Jordy and me are right that this is the start of something freaking epic. Arthur Hayes was out saying this thing could go, I think if I heard it right, that this thing could just turn around and go to 250. Just turn around and go straight to 250, right? Like Bitcoin futures, there was kind of a sell signal yesterday, and then maybe a blow off top overnight. Fine. This stochastic picture is not particularly good on this 1 hour chart. Fine. Okay. Look at the volume. Oh, where is it? Look at the volume coming into Bitcoin. You see, I mean, I know this is potentially be a very dizzying picture when it comes up, but look at how they're slinging this thing around. Like, just think about this for a second. This is the cerebral part of like this alpha intelligence software. So these pink lines are where, those were prior high volume zones, right? So, they're blowing out the shorts, right? This is where the shorts were involved. They're blowing everyone out. And okay, The volume zone that's closest is 76,400. Okay, cool. Take it down to 76,400. Sit around, wait for a blue triangle. That's it. And if you look at Jordy's work, you may not get down there. And if you look at XRP, you really might not get down there because guess what? For whatever reason, they love this thing. The XRP army, for better or for worse, is back. These characters, like I got a short video that starts out with like, well, if XRP goes to $4, where's the rest of the market? 10,000, 16,000 views. You think retail's looking for information about crypto now? Oh yeah, they are. You make a move like this, retail comes back in. Not just retail, but the institutions are coming back in. They're in with the Bitcoin ETF flows. And the beautiful thing about it is they're not all in at the same time. But back to XRP, XRP is in a box, right? Bag holders, Ripple sells up here. And then there are guys down here just buying any dip. So it's trapped in this box, and whichever way it breaks out, that's what you do with XRP. You just wait for the blue triangle inside the gray box, or you just wait for the blue triangle. And every time you get the blue triangle, you add or take a shot. That's it. I mean, that's not it. That's not easy because people are, trying to tell you, what are they trying to tell you, right? That it's no good. You don't have to buy it here. What happens if you had to buy it here? Like, here's Reuters. Here's the media. Does anybody remember all this talk from the Fed about how the debasement trade was over? Does anybody remember this? Like, the Fed is hiking rates, higher for longer. Warsh is hawkish because he says he doesn't like inflation. And then Reuters, in an attempt to explain what's going on. Remember, that's what journalists are trying to do. They're trying to explain what's going on because they don't know. They don't know. They're like, the debasement trade must be back. Oh, it's the dollar. Yeah, weak dollar. Yeah, remember that? Yeah, let's write about that. Because, we can sell that to our readers. It makes it look like we know what we're talking about when the fact of the matter is they don't. They don't really understand why the market went up. And it's very simple. The market went up because it never should have gone down. All we're doing is unwinding some sort of, like Toby would call it, just suppression, right? Not only was the price suppressed, but so was the sentiment. So were you. They spent 9 months pushing you out of crypto, using information from the cryptoverse, and crypto spent 9 months talking itself out of crypto until finally everyone was forced to agree, or supposedly everyone was forced to agree, because if you didn't agree, you were a pariah, a moron, whatever. Everyone left. No one talked to you. No one wanted to listen to you. Whatever. You became extremely unpopular if you did not start believing in 40K. The 40K crowd, when Bitcoin was at 120, or even when Bitcoin was at 80 or 90, I mean, they were obviously contrarian geniuses at that moment. From a trading point of view, there's no arguing that. But when everybody was forced to embrace this 40K thing, no one thought that, oh my God, they just talked crypto out of crypto. They just talked everyone out. I mean, I know. I mean, it was like, I remember the live stream before this took off. To get on the air for an hour, it took 8 hours of research and PowerPoint and whatever just to be able to get on the air, because that's how dead the market was. And I should have known that that was the bottom. I should have known because that was so painful. Boo-hoo. Other influencers went to like lifestyle stuff. Guys I respect for Bitcoin TA were talking about, stocks. Like everyone just packed it in. Everyone's just like, you know what? I got to find something else to talk about because we're going to be here until October with nothing to do. So we'll just talk about my gym routine. Like, it wasn't a selling climax. It was the basement in your mentality. You were so depressed. I don't even know if people can get undepressed fast enough. You went from depression to shock. And now everyone's sitting here trying to figure out what to do. Well, okay, I know what I'm doing. You know, remember all this talk during the bull market? Oh, you have to have a plan. Yeah. What's your plan? Do you have a plan? No one has a plan. Everybody had a plan for October. Do you have a plan for now? You know, do you have a plan for if NVIDIA earnings come out or something happens over there and everyone goes, oh my God, I have to allocate money faster into crypto? Anybody thinking about that? Like what happens if this tech thing somehow accelerates, or what happens if crypto becomes the leading way to trade AI? What happens if this hyperscaler debt thing is just a looming problem, a problem that creates lower returns in both the stocks and the bonds, and the only way to trade it in a fast-moving instrument that gives you that beta on the upside, as the finance nerds would say, is crypto. In other words, Druckenmiller, think about it. He comes out and goes, everything Bessent said was BS. So what's his position? What's he going to do? Is he going to short the long bond and fight the Fed? Maybe. That would be a kind of a Soros thing to do. Is that going to work today? I don't know. Druck likes stuff that's fast moving. You know, by coming out and saying this, Druck is saying that he's going to take a position. He's going to take a big position betting that whatever this is backfires or doesn't work. And in crypto, whether it works and they have to print or it doesn't work and there's a double debt problem, oh my God. Like the Fed is tightening in that environment. Oh, stop it. Oh, stop it. Just to turn from, oh my God, he's raising rates, to, oh my God, he's never raising rates. Never. The only thing he can do is sit or print. Because again, who's going to bail out Bessent? Like if Bessent makes a fool out of himself and the long bond comes unglued, who's backstopping Bessent and the hyperscalers? Because you got to think about this, right? Private sector bonds and public sector bonds go together. In other words, people say the Treasury is the risk-free bond, and then we evaluate the private sector relative to the risk-free bond. So if the 30-year Treasury is at 5%, a long-term debt instrument or a 20-year bond or whatever for, say, a hyperscaler is 8%. Okay. And if the Treasury yield continues to rise, the yields continue to rise on the hyperscaler debt, and that debt falls out of bed or becomes impossible to issue, or both. So how are you trading AI, or how are you trading this Bessent thing? What other way is there to do? Okay, well, you can buy gold. And I'm sure there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that. You know, could gold go to 5,000? Yeah, sure. Like let's find a dip in gold. Let's just find it. You know, we know what the big picture looks like. You know, so you know, gold goes straight up. This is the futures contract. Gold goes straight up and then goes down. All right. So why would that happen? Well, here's a dip signal that's not necessarily working. Fine. What happens if gold comes down here and holds? You know, what happens if they wash everybody out? Or I have another idea. What happens if gold and silver are the fear trade of the last 9 months? And the liquidity trade or the policy error trade is Bitcoin. And what happens if there are 8 altcoins in Patreon Platinum that benefit from this new world? What if the handful of the altcoins that benefit from what's going to happen here is smaller than you think it is? In other words, if you got a substantial retracement in some of these altcoins, what altcoins would you be after, say, on a 38% retracement? I don't even think any, I haven't heard one single word about that. I've heard, oh my God, XRP is up. I've heard, oh my God, Scott Bessent, because everybody on Twitter is now an expert on Scott Bessent, Treasury policy, QE, monetary policy. Everyone's an expert, right? Everyone's an engagement farmer on Bessent now. No one is talking about what does the future now look like. Actually, let me rephrase that. It's not a question of what the future now looks like. It's what the present has always been and totally ignored. In other words, what's next? What are we going to do now? What's the future? No, bro. What's the present that you have not traded? So when I tell people that, I'm buying dips, come get me, that's why. Because we've been ignoring reality. What? AI agents are not going to trade on crypto rails? Or the whole world is not going to go to stablecoins? They're not going to have to massively devalue the dollar through printing, through the speed of machines using stablecoins, all of these mechanisms that I could go on and on and on explaining. You don't need to explain it, right? The dollar has to go lower, period. The only way out of a debt crisis is to devalue the currency, period. End of story. That's the tweet. That's it. Done. Done. Want to debate Scott Bessent? Great. Awesome opening for a live stream. Do you need it? No. No. Because the only way out of a debt crisis is to devalue the currency. So that's like the third way Bitcoin wins. A Bitcoin wins here no matter what. They're fighting it on a technical analysis basis. They're looking at the wrong stuff. Nobody wants to talk about buying dips. Everybody's afraid that it's going to turn around and go down in their face, which, okay, I get that. So I get that, right? But that's the knife experience, right? The whole screen goes red and everyone goes, oh my God, it's going to happen again. Is it? Is it? Or what's going to happen again is we're going to go back to this thing where we were in 2024, where you had like 2 red days or 3 red days max to get involved. And if you didn't get involved, you wind up having to pay much higher prices, or you just had to deal with the fact that you were like missing it. Then there's an idea that the first leg up, most of that stuff that they mooned is wrong. It's the speculative stuff. It's the stuff that they're short or the stuff from the last cycle. And basically, most of what they mooned is wrong. This is what we published in Patreon. It's like, okay, this is what they mooned, which took research to figure out what sectors were really mooning hard. And then, okay, based on that, this is what we think is next. We got 2 versions of that, VIP and deluxe, or, great and super duper. Because again, no one's talking about it. Everyone's like, well, let's talk about the 50-week moving average in Bitcoin on CoinDesk. Yeah, okay, dude. You continue to talk about that. And you're going to see that 3 months from now, you can be like, oh my God, I wish I was doing my homework. Oh my God, can you believe I missed ETH and associated altcoins? Can you believe it? It was right there. And when it was done, when the shorts were getting blown out, they gave you a dip. Arrow is down 3%. You know what I'm saying? Like all of this ETH connected stuff, it's getting kind of spanked. We can pull up the Arrow chart because I know people are super interested, right? So, there's your sell signal. And there is Arrow coming into a wall of volume. Now, all we got to do is sit here and wait for a little blue thing to happen. We just got to sit and let them come right to us. Because these short sellers or these guys who want to reload, or this market just drifts in limbo as everyone just sits there and stares at it and wonders whether or not they have to buy, which is why we told people to buy at 60 something. We brought guests on the air. We did everything. Toby was like, don't give up. Don't give up. Crypto is not dead. August is going to be good. Now everyone's going to sit here and stare at it. And if you sit here and you stare at it, you don't do your homework, or you don't find a support level, you're going to miss it. Not the next little blip, but you don't want to miss the next big thing mentally. So this is the concluding point. From a psychological point of view, in my opinion, we're buying dips. I'm buying dips psychologically as an analyst. If I'm wrong, great. But my attitude is I'm looking for a dip. Come get me. Come take me out. Come show me I'm wrong. I've been wrong for 9 months and I don't care. Because I wasn't wrong for 9 months, because this thing is just going to unwind the entire down move, because the whole down move was BS. It was BS. It was delayed gratification. It was a liquidity squeeze. It was a geopolitical event. It was whatever. Why did the market go down? Can someone tell me why the market went down to begin with? Why? Because everyone was chasing hyperscalers and nobody wanted crypto. There's no money in the world, right? We owe $40 trillion. There's money everywhere. There's no money for crypto, right? Yeah, okay. All of this stuff that they told you over the last 9 months is wrong. The 4-year cycle math looked good. It did. But that was a trap. That's my opinion. It looked great. The analysts who used it at the high were smart. But when the bottom actually comes in, it's not serving you. Now you got to get your head turned around. You got to get your head turned around fast, which is why I'm pushing this dip buying tool to try to find the dips. 1 hour charts, 4 hour charts, daily charts, whatever. This dip is a day. This dip is 2 days. I can tell you right now, if this dip is 2 days, you better watch out. We have targets on this thing. We publish one in Patreon in a chart report. You've heard some of them on the streams. You know, if people figure out that this thing is not going back down, you're going to have ETF flows. You're not going to have the 5th biggest ETF flow. You're going to have the biggest ETF flows, right? Because they got to allocate money from one place to the other. The fact that this was only the 5th biggest ETF flow, like week or area, great. They're not convinced yet. They were totally convinced at 100K in 2024, but you know, now they don't really want it. They don't want it now. They loved it at 125, but at 77, oh, I don't know. Should I do it? Should I stay with my hyperscaler sludge? I love those stocks. Okay, bro. People better get their heads switched around here real fast. If I'm wrong, okay, fine. It goes back down and I just find another point. Or if it goes to 40, I'm an idiot. Fine. Fine. See, the thing is, I don't care, because the risk of being wrong is infinitesimal to the risk of missing this on the upside. You cannot miss a bottom. You cannot miss a major move. And whether the bottom is now or later, you got to be on the coins for this AI era, because the one thing that I need to leave you with is that crypto is going to be the primary mechanism for trading the AI future. Scarcity in Bitcoin, right? The velocity of money and Ethereum and its proof of stake mechanism. It doesn't have to get more complicated than Bitcoin, ETH, and the new Magnificent Seven of altcoins, because it wasn't that complicated in equities, and that went on for years. Years. If you found the Magnificent Seven or even part of it, and then just got on the rally and just were like, okay. Or you bought any sharp dip, because you know there are some coins we want to buy on a dip. You know, they whack this thing, they whack altcoins 20%. Fine. We got a list of coins we want to buy. Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome who's here. Zepeda's first on the stream. Thomas Chai, time to BTFD. Zepeda says it's time to hit the like button. Yob's got Lego Bill. Did we get Lego Bill? I think we got Lego Bill somehow in there. We gotta figure that out. Bull Runner is here. Let's get the noble knowledge from Rave Song Reskers. Dejeski, a Spartan Colonel, a member, along with Odd Dark. Supermat from England, good afternoon. Loco, Mike Volmer, MJ Hits, Shelly Farmer Allen at One Woman Hedge Fund. Blown Ideas. Boom, we collect cards. Love that. Also a Spartan Colonel. Farmer Sam Forrest. What about September crash? Okay. What about Rectember? It's a good question. So let's end with this. September and October can be extremely volatile months, obviously. Equities are absurd. They're absurd. They have a debt problem over there. Can they swing Bitcoin around? Yeah. Is that a risk? Of course, there's always a risk. There's always a risk that that whole thing comes unglued and takes Bitcoin and altcoins with it. Continue to believe that Bitcoin is going to come back faster than anything once they're done. I mean, I can't believe the administration in an election in a year where there's an event in November is going to let NASDAQ go down more than 10%. I don't even think they're going to let it go down 5%, but they're not going to let it go down more than 10% before the plunge protection team comes in. There's also the idea, which I will end with, that instead of Rectember being a down move in legacy that drags crypto with it, what happens if Rectember is bulls in crypto getting left behind because Bitcoin melts up, leaves everybody behind, leaves the asset allocation models for equities broken because they all are long the wrong stuff? What happens if Rectember is a vertical move that wrecks psychology, asset allocation, and possibly even P&L? Because they're not long. Arthur Hayes is out with some version of that today. I've been saying something akin to this, that the way they vent the pressure in the system is to have the market go up, not down. Or the crypto market, or at least Bitcoin, go up rather than have the 2008 big short fantasy. Always good to welcome Eagle King. Lego Bill is a cool emoji. I guess Eagle King got that in here. God bless him. God bless the Eagle King. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, that is it for today. We will see you tomorrow.